Welcome to a lesson in English for Standard 9. In this video, we will go through the synopsis of the story and the textual answers of the lesson, The Fall of Troy, both part 1 and part 2. A synopsis of the story to help you understand the answers better. So, we have Troy, which was a very rich city in Asia Minor, rich in commerce, that is trading, buying and selling, and agriculture. This was because they had the sea in front of them and the Mount Ida behind them, which provided enough of water through the rivers and streams. Over and above, Troy had huge walls all around their city to protect them. They had brave soldiers and they had big gates to their city which they closed when there was any problem, but otherwise people went in and out of Troy. Now, they were very happy until Paris, who was a prince of Troy, went to Greece, met Helen, who was the wife of King Menelaus, and persuaded her to elope with him. So he took her, went back to Troy, married her. Naturally, the Greeks were very angry. So they wanted to take revenge. They sailed away to Troy in their ships, all ready for war. And this war lasted for 10 years. Every day there was some fighting that went on. The Trojans came out of their gates and the Greeks came out of their tents and ships, and the fighting went on. And so many times people were killed on both the sides. Hector, a king, was killed. Achilles, a brave soldier, was killed. And Paris himself was killed. So finally, the Greeks thought, instead of this daily fighting, we will think of another plan to get victory. Okay, so there was a cunning soldier called Odysseus. He says, let us build this great wooden horse. Okay, so we'll build a horse, we'll put men inside, okay, ready to fight. And so they burnt their tents, they took their ships, they went near an island, they put the sails down so that no one could see them. The Trojans woke up in the morning, they said, okay, this is very good, no more fighting, and they started rejoicing. But when they went out, they seen this horse, big wooden horse there, and there was only one person next to it. He was a Greek. So on asking, he said, the Greeks are going home and they are so worried about their voyage, long voyage back home. So they made this wooden horse as a gift to the sea god. So the Trojans were superstitious. They said, no, why will we allow Greeks to take their luck? We will take this horse inside our city. And in spite of their wise priests telling them, don't break down the wall, because the Trojan horse, this horse, was too big to enter the city. They broke the wall, they brought the horse in, they enjoyed themselves whole day and they went to sleep. Okay, now the Greeks come back. They came back, someone saw them coming back. He gave a signal to those who were the soldiers who were hiding in the horse. They opened the horse, they came out, they opened the gates, fighting took place. There was terrible fighting that took place. Everything in Troy was destroyed, okay, and burnt. Okay, now after that, when they destroyed Troy, old King Priam, he was killed. All his brave sons were killed. Hector's wife and old mother and sister was carried off as slaves by the Greeks. Okay, and then Menelaus meets Helen, due to whom the whole fight took place. And he saw that she was very, feeling ashamed of herself. And so he took her back with him after forgiving her. Now this is the gist of the story. Let us come to the question and answers. How were epics transmitted from generation to generation? So we have epics called the Ramayana and Mahabharata, and the Greek epics called the Iliad and the Odyssey. Now, the epics were transmitted from singer to singer until finally someone wrote it down for others to read. who are considered to be the authors of the epics Ramayana and Mahabharata respectively. The author of Ramayana is Valmiki and of Mahabharata it is Ved Vyas. Now, what are these epics we are talking about? They are long poems that talk about the deeds of a great national hero or a great national war. So in their stories, they tell of the nation's early history, the wars, how many heroes they had, etc. Why is Homer honored with the title Father of European Poetry? Homer was a blind poet who lived about 900 BCE and wandered from one Greek city to another, singing his poems to anybody who would take him into their homes. So this wandering singer, because he, sang all his poems to so many people, was given the title Father of European Poetry. How were the Trojans protected during wartime? During wartime, the great gates of Troy would remain closed, and the city was like a strong fortress, safe from all attack. It was protected by walls surrounding it as well as the hills behind it. How did the location of Troy help it to grow into a very rich, prosperous city? Now, Troy was a city in Asia Minor near the narrow sea that led from the Aegean to the Black Sea. It was well situated for commerce and agriculture. In front of the city was the sea used to carry goods and grain. At the back was the high peak of Mount Ida, from which flowed many rivers and streams. The valleys among the hills were well watered and fertile, so due to this special location and the water, Troy grew into a rich, prosperous city. So if you see this map here, you see this red dot, it is Troy having the sea in front and Mount Ida behind it. What was the cause of the 10-year-old war between the Greeks and the Trojans? Paris, a prince from Troy, persuaded Helen, the wife of Greek king Menelaus, to elope or to run away with him. He brought her to Troy. The Greeks wanted revenge, and so they sailed to Troy and laid siege to the city, which lasted for 10 long years. What was the reason for Troy to rejoice and celebrate? One morning, the Trojans woke up expecting to go and fight. To their surprise, they saw that all the tents were burnt, the shore was deserted, and all the Greek ships had gone. After 10 years of war, they definitely had reason to rejoice and celebrate. How did Odysseus plan to defeat the Trojans? Cunning Odysseus thought of building a big wooden horse. Then Greek fighters would hide inside the horse. They would burn their tents and pretend to sail away. But these people would return again at night when the Trojans were asleep, attack the city, burn and kill the Trojans. This was Odysseus' plan to defeat the Trojans. How did the cunning Greek explain the presence of such a large wooden horse? The cunning Greek said that the other Greeks were afraid of the long voyage home. So they made this horse as an offering to the god of the sea. Do you think the Greeks and Trojans were superstitious? Give reasons for your answer. Now, to believe in superstitions means to believe in something that is, not proved at all. It's just a belief. The Greeks were not superstitious, as the wooden offering was not an offering to the sea god, but it was a clever trick. The Trojans, on the other hand, were superstitious. They believed that if they brought the wooden horse into their city, they would be blessed by the sea god. So they even broke down a part of the wall to bring the horse inside their city to give them the good blessings and the luck. What reckless, that means careless, thoughtless step did the Trojans take? The Trojans took the thoughtless and reckless step of breaking down part of their strong wall to drag the wooden horse in. How did the Greeks enter the city of Troy? When it was dark, the Greeks who had sailed away now sailed back. And the Greek who they have left behind, who was waiting for them, crept up to the wooden horse and gave the signal. So those who were inside of the horse opened the horse, they climbed out and opened the gates. Then the whole Greek army entered Troy. How did the Greek ships remain hidden from Troy? The Greek ships did not sail far. As soon as they were hidden by an island, they lowered their sails, dropped anchor, and waited for the night so that they could go back. What distressing sounds and sights could be witnessed at Troy that fateful night? Distressing meaning very worrisome and upsetting. Troy was filled with leaping flames of fire, the sounds of shouting, the noise of weapons, and the cries of weeping women. The sleeping Trojans sprung out of their beds, but many were killed even before they could put on their armor and seize their weapons. What was the destiny of the royal family of Troy and that of Helen? Destiny means the future or the fate of the king's family of Troy. Now, old King Priam, the ruler of Troy, was killed with all his brave sons. Hector's wife, his old mother and sister were carried off as slaves by the Greeks. Helen was forgiven by her husband Menelaus, and she went back with him to Greece. How could the fall of Troy be avoided? The fall of Troy could have been avoided if the Trojans had listened to their wise priest and not broken down a part of their wall to bring the wooden horse in. How was Achilles killed? The brave Achilles was killed by a poisoned arrow that entered his heel. Who was responsible for Helen eloping with Paris? Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love, had turned Helen's heart away from her home, her husband, and her child, so she was responsible for Helen eloping with Paris. This is how Troy looked on that fateful day, and it was all caused by this Trojan horse.